In 2020, portals leading to other dimensions began to appear. They appeared all over the planet. This led the whole world before something crazy starts. Most countries have sent their troops to these gates to find out more about them. But not a single person returned alive. Then hordes of monsters began to emerge from this godforsaken gate. They were so powerful and invincible that all modern weapons could do nothing against them. And they began to attack all the people who happened to be in their way. But some patrons began to choose people whom they endowed with amazing power and abilities. They were called hunters. With the hunters at the forefront, humanity began to strike back. Because of this, their abilities began to progress more and more with each kill. Patrons can grant active hunters additional strength and abilities, with the help of which they become even more powerful and as a result invincible. Among the countless number of hunters, there appeared one whose strength was immeasurable. An immortal army of soldiers and the ability to control fire. The whole world called him the Demon King. He possessed the special ability the player. Only he could progress through hunting. But it was ruled by 12 great heroes who were equated with gods. His existence was erased from the pages of history forever. And people who called themselves gods to create Eden. Hunters began to be considered a new step in evolution. And those who could not become hunters turned into slaves. Hunters began to rule the world. And in this way, 100 years have already passed. Life has changed and acquired new colors. The boy ran very fast. And it was noticeable that he was running away from someone. Sweat was already dripping from him, but he continued to run headlong. A man was sitting on the tree that the boy was running through. He asked the boy if he had finished yet. The boy replied that he had already reached his limit and he had absolutely no energy left to move on. Although he said that he wanted to change the whole world. But with such an attitude, he can hardly become a hunter. In order for patrons to notice him, you need to go beyond your capabilities. The man's name was Song-gu. The guy asked him when he was first noticed by a patron or if he was also going over his limit and moving on. Song-gu replied that it wasn't like that because he was supported and helped from the beginning. The boy lowered his eyebrows and it was clear on his face that he thought it was completely unfair. Song-gu said that life is not fair. The indicator was even that the boy was an ordinary person, and he was a hunter. He offered the boy to do something else if he could not continue and did not have the strength. Song-gu held out his hand in front of him. He spoke a few unintelligible words and a stick appeared in his hand. And threw it to the boy. Was it really the inventory of a real hunter? He was amazed every time he saw such a thing. The man said that there is nothing to be surprised about. As soon as he becomes a hunter, he will immediately understand everything. The guy smiled and he didn't seem to really believe it. After he learned that his parents were killed by hunters, Song-gu gave him a book as a keepsake. It described a fight the hunters had started and he wanted to fix it. Song-gu helped him get through all those years of training. But when the thought of what he was able to achieve creeps into his head, he gets the impression that he will never be able to become a hunter. But in reality, whether he will become a hunter or not, only heaven decides. So they say in Eden. The man hit the boy and said it was all a lie. He asked not to think about the bad and he will definitely become a hunter. Song-gu assured him of this and asked if he still had the book he had given him earlier. He kept asking the boy about it. Of course, he had it and kept it in a secret place. Because it was a memory of his parents. It was the autobiography of a forgotten hero whose history was erased by 12 gods. Song-gu kept asking about her, but the boy promised never to lose her. The boy handed this book to the hunter and said that if this hero were alive now, the world would be kinder and would remain the best place in the universe. A woman watched their conversation. Who finally found them? She started using her magic against them. But Song-gu noticed it. Her blast wave was moving clearly towards them. But Sung-gu pushed the boy away from him. He fell far from the explosion site under a tree. There was a huge explosion and the woman watched it. Her task was to kill them. The boy was shocked. He could not understand what was happening here. Then this woman came down to him. He was able to get a close look at her and realized that it was a hunter. But why did she appear here? She ordered him to bow before her. After these words, he immediately fell to his knees. But the thing was that his body just did what she ordered. He couldn't do anything. His body was out of control. Other hunters descended from the sky. They bowed their heads before the woman. As it turned out, it was the Queen of all Eden, Lady Athena. The boy was surprised that before him stood the ruler of Eden of the highest rank. But what did one of the 12 founding gods of Eden forget? She said that he could not have run far and ordered the hunters to capture him and bring him to her. They understood the task. But they rose high into the sky at the same time. They only managed to get on his tail. The woman wondered who this boy was and what he had forgotten here. She didn't see a drop of magic in him. The boy understood that he now had the autobiography of the demonic king. And it is she who hides the dirty crimes of the 12 heroes, which they have been hiding all along. He hoped that she would not suspect him of this and would simply let him go. She said it was just a worthless slave. After that, she turned around and walked away. He was afraid to look up because he didn't know if she had already left. But as soon as he wanted to get up, she flew to him in a second and said that she felt magical power from him. Although almost no traces of it remained. His heart beat faster and his breathing became more frequent. His look was frightened and he was sweating all over. Seeing how he froze, she guessed that he might have something that could not be shown. Athena leaned over to the boy and told him to show and tell everything he knew. His body moved by itself. Now he understood what the true power of the gods was. He tried to control his limbs and ordered them not to move, but it was useless. He understood that if this book fell into her hands, then he was dead. She could even make him talk. The boy took out a book and started talking about it. This is the story of a demonic king who was a true hero to mankind. Eden definitely didn't want the world to know his story. Athena picked up this book. The boy was scared and thought that everyone close to him would die. If something goes wrong, his entire district can be wiped off the face of the planet. This is exactly how Eden works. They forcefully take away or destroy what is in their way. He couldn't just give this book away. Tears began to appear in his eyes. Athena set this book on fire and destroyed it with her magical power. She was finally able to find her. It was a biography of a demon king. She did not know how she had appeared to such a slave. But she found it and took it away. At that moment, Song-gu called her and attacked her. All the land nearby was broken. Song-gu grabbed the book that Athena picked up. The boy burst into tears when he saw his mentor. He was saved. Song-gu said that he can't cry because he is a man. He praised him for holding up well and doing a great job of keeping the book safe with him. The boy asked who Song-gu really was. How could he stand up to one of Athena's 12 gods? He apologized and said that he did not have much time to tell him everything in detail. Song-gu didn't think he would be found so quickly. The guy kept saying the same thing all the time. That he wants to change the world. Therefore, he decided to make a bet on someone like that and gave the book back to the boy. Song-gu said that the hunters have declared themselves gods and are ruling the common people. Anyone as weak as the boy is like domestic cattle, waiting for someone stronger to deal with him. If he has the power to change the world, a power that can withstand 12 gods, then will he still want to change the world for the better? While the boy stood in thought, Athena recovered and activated her magic power. She wanted revenge. Athena was advancing and they had no time to think. Song-gu wanted the boy to answer him clearly, because he will not be able to face Athena alone. The guy replied that he agreed, and if he could get hold of such a power, he would definitely change the whole world. Song-gu was satisfied with such an answer, and he pierced the boy with his sword. But the boy did not expect such a mentor. The boy's eyes immediately became bright yellow. Song-gu said if he meets him there to be nice to him. The boy flew into the air and did not understand what was happening around him. It seemed to split into small pieces. Then it completely disappeared. A contract was executed and patronage obtained. The guy appeared in a completely different dimension. It seemed to be assembled from tiny particles. Li Jun was getting used to the new place. He was sure that he had been pierced by a sword, but now there was not a single scratch on him. The body felt completely different than before. The power that was now felt in his body and this voice that told him about receiving patronage. Has he become a hunter now? But he absolutely did not understand where he was now. There was an unclear area around him, as if he was on another planet. The magical power he feels emanates from his body. Was he inside the gate? He heard footsteps not far from him. But he is not ready to make new acquaintances. Therefore, he decided that he needs to quickly hide at least until the moment when he understands where he is and how he got here. When he hid, he saw a goblin. And now he was absolutely sure that he was inside the gates of the dungeon. Goblins are the initial and weakest monsters. But they were much more dangerous than one could imagine. That is why they are also called rookie killers. Because of their excellent sense of smell and hearing, as well as their crazy hunting style. For newcomers who appear here without any information, meeting them is tantamount to death. The boy hoped that this goblin would disappear and not notice him. But he smelled the boy and noticed him. He was forced to find a way out and somehow solve this situation. He grabbed the stone. The boy didn't understand if what he learned from Song-gu would work for him. But he had no choice now. He can only rely on the abilities he studied with the hope of becoming a hunter in the future. He threw a stone to distract the goblin, and he did it well. The goblin turned away and began to look in a completely different direction. At that time, the boy grabbed his hand and cut off his head. He was surprised. The goblin flew into small pieces after his impact. The boy was shocked by his strength. He just wanted to scare him and steal the weapon. He still could not believe that he most likely became a hunter. He received a message that an angel had paid attention to him. He knew it was a demon king. While the boy was thinking, a whole horde of goblins was already heading towards him. They heard absolutely any sound. There were a lot of them. Even more than expected. And the worst part was that the guy behind all these goblins was their leader. The boss of the goblin dungeon. The hero thought that this was his end. He was very sorry because he had only recently awakened as a hunter. He understood that he was no match for their leader. But the boy remembered Song-gu's words that a real man never despairs. And if he has the power to change the world and which is able to resist the 12 gods, will he still want to change this world? And the boy answered then, if he can take possession of such a power, then he will definitely change this world. Then he realized that he could not die so easily here and now. He had no right to it until he changed this world. Angel paid attention to him and it was a chance that is given only once in a lifetime. The hero sped up. And with the help of his skills and anger, he began to destroy the goblins one by one. He was motivated by his promise. And couldn't let Song-gu down. There were fewer and fewer goblins. He destroyed them as if in training. He cut off the hands and heads of some. Some he divided in half. The rest simply died from weapons. And his efforts were not in vain. Memories of the teacher appeared before him again, and he moved to another dimension where there were a lot of autumn trees. And it happened because he raised his level. He remembered Song Nu saying that when he looked at this boy, he began to understand what a genius looked like. Ordinary people have limits, but if he received patronage, then he was sure that this boy would become a hunter who was second to none. Meanwhile, the hero was able to raise his level again. All the goblins were destroyed, he was able to do it. But only one remained. Their strongest leader. The boy looked at him with a pitiless look. After that, he jumped on him and struck him. But he was very powerful. And the hero just flew away from him as if from a trampoline. Even if it was a goblin, it was still a boss. In the rules, it is written that in order to defeat the goblin leader, you need to be at least an S-rank hunter, otherwise there was no point in even trying. The boy had just woken up and most likely had an E or F rank. I wonder if someone like him who just woke up can kill the goblin leader. He had no choice but to try to do so. He took the stick and wanted to put all his strength into his blow. He adjusted himself to concentrate all his power in one point. The spear is the weapon of the Demon King. And also the best weapon he has. And now he has the authority to use it. The end of the spear caught fire. The boy began to prepare for an attack and began to run away. He was maximally motivated at this moment. The hero put all his strength into this attack. And he was able to destroy the leader and raise his level again. He coped with this challenge. But now the power of his spear was reduced to 0. But as expected after the boss battle, it was all he was capable of. And the boy fell powerlessly to the ground. But he was lying there alone among the corpses. Newborn knights entered this territory. The entire area was littered with goblin corpses. They did not understand who could kill them all. Even the goblin leader was dead. Then they saw this guy who was alive and still breathing. They approached him and began to look around. The hero was taken to the hospital. He was connected to various machines and given a large amount of blood. Because after the battle he lost a very large number. He opened his eyes and realized that he was in a hospital. And he made sure that it was not really a dream. Athena appeared out of nowhere and almost took the Demon King's autobiography from him. After being pierced by Song Gu's sword, he woke up inside the gate. And because of the leader of the goblins, with whom he faced, he almost died. But he was able to survive thanks to the possession of fire, which was given to him by an angel. But after that he switched off because he received a large number of serious injuries. He thinks he was saved by the hunters who entered the gate. The nurse went to the boy's ward and said that he is now strictly forbidden to move and get out of bed. She asked if he had a headache and how he was feeling. She said hunters from the top league guild found him and brought him here. If it were not for them, it is not known what would have happened to the hero next. He asked, not knowing who it was. The nurse said that the boy was badly injured, so he was very lucky. He was injured in the incident that took place inside the gate. Therefore, someone from the association had to come. She asked him to rest for now. The nurse really liked him and she wanted to tell everyone about him as soon as possible. The boy stopped the nurse before leaving the ward. And asked what year it is now. She said that his memory is now recovering and most likely he has a headache now. It was now 2022. He was shocked because 2022 is 100 years before his birth. Gates began to appear in 2020. And in 2022, many hunters began to create names for themselves. It was an era of heroes. The hero remembers again. Song Gu said that the hunters declared themselves gods and ruled over ordinary people. Anyone as weak as him is like domestic cattle waiting to be slaughtered. He thought back to Songgu's question about the power that would allow him to save this world. In his time, where you had to be special to become a hunter, this was an era where hunters received patronage directly from patrons. And he got this opportunity. The boy began to disconnect the devices from his body with his own hands. Droppers and a device that measures pressure. The nurse warned that it is very dangerous to get up in such a state, let alone go somewhere. The guy got out of bed and said he was fine. He did not have dizziness as before. He asked the nurse where the bathroom was in this hospital. She replied that the bathroom is near the entrance. He went into the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. He was completely different from the little boy he used to be. The hero did not believe that this body now really belonged to him. He never had such muscles. And now he was taller than 190 centimeters. But the face was very similar. However, his body and appearance seemed to belong to another person. He thought that someone had entered his bathroom. A representative from the association came to him. He introduced himself to Kim Soo and gave his business card. After what happened at the gate, the boy was saved by the Guild of the Higher League. He was told that the boy had certain lapses in memory. The representative asked if this was true. The boy realized that the nurse had told him about it. The representative asked to tell in more detail about what he remembered. His name, data, family. How did he even get into the gate, and does he remember anything at all? After he was brought to the hospital, the association itself tried to find information about the boy, but it is clear, as they told him, that nothing could be found. No name, no family, or anything. He could not be told everything so that his information from the past would now appear. They say the memory loss could be related to what happened at the gate or waking up as a hunter. The guy said he was 23 years old and his name was. It so happened that the name of the demonic king immediately came to his mind. Lee Jun. For some reason, he got his name mixed up with that of the demon king. For some reason, he thought it was the right decision. He didn't remember anything else. The representative said it was a minor problem. Then the man asked if the boy felt anything when he was inside the gate. He replied that he heard an incomprehensible voice inside the gate. He heard the words, "I will be your patron." And he thought that he was dreaming of it. The man's hands became numb and he tried to move them. He said that most likely the boy had become a hunter and asked if he knew anything about them. The hero replied that they seemed to be specially selected people. The representative stood up and said that he was very grateful that the boy was able to give him time. And after their conversation, someone else may come to him, but the association will definitely contact him again. The man bowed and said that maybe the boy would be scared by this information, but he had become someone really important to their whole world. He wished him all the best and a speedy recovery. The boy looked at the representative through the window and pondered his every word. A virtual screen appeared in front of him. His status was indicated there. It was one of the Demon King's abilities. The reason why the 12 heroes tried to hold back the Demon King. And the reason why the Demon King could grow stronger faster than the rest of the heroes. Edem was so afraid of it that he erased all mention of it. The Demon King was special. To be precise, he was a hunter. The guy decided to check his status. He was called player. The same status as the Demon King. Although hunters needed the patron's permission to grow stronger, he could do so without any help. He was also the only one who could get stronger through hunting. If you put all the factors together, he is the Demon King. And it is he who has the status of a player in this world. And he has all these abilities that others cannot have. Meanwhile, in the hospital, the boy met a nurse in the ward. She congratulated him on receiving the status of a hunter. But he was not sure that this achievement should be congratulated. The girl was convinced of this, because it was equivalent to winning the lottery. Even the lowest F-rank hunters can become so rich that an ordinary person cannot even imagine it. Even without fighting the monsters at the gate, there are many things that become available to them. He can now become a blacksmith who forges magical items with the help of mana infusion. Or he can become a bodyguard of serious people. Huge queues will form from rich people hoping to hire him. The boy knew all this very well even without the help of a nurse. Thanks to the fact that those who are not chosen are completely powerless. And are these the things he should be happy about? The nurse almost forgot to deliver a gift from Kim Soo, a man from the association. These are the items that were on him during the portal incident. They said that most likely he will not be able to wear them anymore, but decided to return them, maybe he will need them. The nurse congratulated the boy on his discharge from the hospital and wished him not to get into such trouble again. The city lived and functioned to the maximum. People went about their business. The boy left the hospital and realized that this is the era of heroes. Gangnam. Before, he could not even think about the fact that he would be able to visit here. Everything looked very bright and peaceful. A representative from the association approached Lee Jun and said that he had been waiting for him for a long time. He offered the boy to go to the association with him, because he thought it was a bad idea for a newborn hunter to walk around town. The man convinced Lee Jun that once they registered him as a hunter, he would be given an apartment right after that. From time to time, they have people who have a similar situation. He said that he wanted to make Lee Jun happy right away, because the analyses showed that he is an S-rank hunter. There aren't many people in their country who get an S-rank right after waking up. He offered to continue on his way and he would explain the rest after they registered Lee Jun. When they arrived at the Hunters Association, the boy immediately approached the manager. She said that people usually get F or E ranks when they wake up. Hunter ranks are in alphabetical order. The higher his rank, the more prospects open to him. And also, a special relationship to him will grow. Finally, his registration was completed without any problems. And now the representative wants to show the apartments where Lee Jun will live. When the boy saw his new home, he was as surprised as possible. It was a very cozy and spacious apartment. There was everything you need for a comfortable stay. He even had a tear on his face. The man noticed how much Jun liked the place. The boy thanked. Today was a special day because he was able to become a hunter. And now he felt what it was like to get his own home. The representative added that he forgot to say something. There are some who really want to meet Lee Jun. His eyes lit up. He was confused as to who wanted to meet him here. He immediately began to think who it could be. There shouldn't be anyone here who knows anything about the future. The man replied that it was the head of the High League Guild that had saved him. He seems to be interested in the boy. Lee Jun can decline the request if he is uncomfortable meeting him. It was a fairly active guild that has been attracting quite a bit of attention lately. The guy thought for a while and agreed to a meeting with their head. They met. The man introduced first Lee Jun for the chairman and then the leader of the major league that saved him. But the chairman said that he wanted to introduce himself. It was Song-gu. He noticed that Lee Jun was a very tall guy. The boy couldn't believe that he really saw Song-gu in front of him. This bald head that he missed so much. He asked what he was staring at. Lee Jun apologized if he offended Song-gu, but it wasn't on purpose. The boy understood that he almost made a mistake. He could not even think that he would meet his mentor so soon. He cared a lot about Lee Jun. Song-gu said that he doesn't hold a grudge against him and asked if they had met before. Because he looked very familiar. Lee Jun replied that he lost all his memories after becoming a hunter, so he wasn't sure if they could have seen each other before. The boy thanked them for saving his life. Without their help, most likely he would not be standing here now in front of him. Song-gu was impressed by how polite a guy Lee Jun was. He liked it. A forgotten hero whom everyone thought was dead. Song-gu, and so they met again. It was night, everything was dark. Lee Jun was lying in bed in his new apartment. He still could not realize that now this is really happening in his life. But what happened to his body anyway? It seems to have become a stranger. It didn't belong to him. However, when he checked all his birthmarks on the body, it was a good argument that the body was definitely his. Player status. A demon king, a hunter from another dimension. He is also a forgotten hero. But why did Lee Jun have his abilities? She was his because the sinful angel became his patron. The question then arises as to what happened to the real demon king. He didn't know anything else. Lee Jun knew that he would not get any answers to his questions. He returned to the past and received the most powerful ability that everyone dreamed of. He got real power. A force that can really change the whole world. The next day, training began at the Hunters Association. All students were sitting in the classroom. When the teacher entered the classroom, Lee Jun was asleep in his seat. He did not care at all about his position among the students. He introduced himself and said that his name was Sang-soo and he would be one of those who would teach them. The students began to discuss the teacher. It was a B-rank hunter. And why they decided to use one of the key members of the association to train the newbies. It turns out that among them there is a hunter on whom the association has high hopes. Lee Jun saw the reaction of the class. Each of them wanted to be this chosen one. This was their chance to attract attention and get into an association or a good guild. Everyone considered himself the only one suitable for this role. Sang-soo said that today there will be a seminar about hunters, after which they will be able to choose their weapons and take a combat test. He asked them not to be nervous. And he asked whether the students know how the awakening of hunters takes place. One of the boys raised his hand and said he needed to be chosen as a supernatural patron. Sang-soo said that was the correct answer. Also, the strength of hunters is determined immediately after awakening. But the hunter is able to progress. He asked what methods they knew for pumping. The girl replied that it was either the closing of the gate or the need to earn the patron's attention with some achievement. It is also possible to obtain certain skills or items from additional support. Sang-soo was satisfied with the students' preparation for the seminar. Then he decided to ask a more difficult question. What is the patron's goal? As he expected, there was silence in the class and no one willing to answer. All the hunters asked themselves this question, but no one knows the answer. Who are the patrons and why do they choose people, turning them into hunters? Sang-soo turned his attention to Lee Jun. Because everyone was trying to draw attention to himself, and he just sat motionless in his place. The teacher turned to the boy and asked him to answer his question. The guy got up. Sang-soo said that a free-form answer is accepted. There is no clear explanation. He just wanted to hear his opinion. Lee Jun thought it was something like entertainment. Sang-soo didn't understand what he meant by that. And asked to answer in more detail. The guy replied that you choose a character, hunt monsters, and enjoy even if he gets stronger. It's like it's all a game. Sang-soo would not accept such an answer. She did not suit him at all. The Demon King allowed the patrons to see their world as nothing more than a game. And despite all the power he gained, he could not prevent death because of these guesses and comparisons. Patrons seemed to value their secrets very much. The girl chose a sword. Sang-soo said it was a good choice and asked if she was ready. She replied that she was ready. She must fight a hungry goblin. It's okay, even if she can't defeat this goblin, it will still be up to Sang-soo to decide whether she passed the test or not. The girl agreed to such conditions. He added that there was no point in worrying because this goblin had been thoroughly brainwashed into not being able to kill or critically injure a human. Then it's time to start the test. The goblin was released from the cage. He was approaching the girl very quickly. She also prepared to meet him and raised her weapon. They faced each other in battle. The goblin looked convincing enough. Because he was very hungry. He hit the girl. She flew to the side and fell to the floor. Without thinking long, the goblin decided to jump on the enemy from behind. Sang-soo thought that this situation was already dangerous enough. But she managed to counterattack and destroy the goblin. It turned out to tear it in half. The girl lay weak on the floor after the battle. Sang-soo was surprised how they managed to win in this situation and kill the goblin. He graded her on the test and said she passed it. It's time for the last contestant. Lee Jun entered the arena with his trusty spear. He had nothing but a shield and a spear. He looked very confident, but the teacher thought it was a very strange combination. Spear and shield. Lee Jun understood that he would only be able to attend further graduation courses if the goblin won now. And if he shows himself well here, he will receive many advantages. Sang-soo then invited the boy to start the test. But unfortunately, all the goblins are finished, so the test will be held with another monster. Since the enemy changes, so do the rules. He will not need to defeat the monster to pass the test. It will only be necessary to obtain consent for its passage from the teacher. This monster has also been brainwashed and will not be able to inflict a mortal wound. And as long as the B-rank hunter is in the arena, there shouldn't be any problems. The boy thought that they would most likely release a kobold. He was similar in strength to a goblin. Lee Jun said that he was fully prepared for the test. Sang-soo was surprised by his answer at the seminar, so he asked not to disappoint him now. The test has started. The monster Lee Jun will fight in the last test is an orc. He has the strength of 2 grown men and unreal life energy. As you know, only hunters not lower than S rank can resist them. All students who watched the test were shocked. And they never knew that there were orcs at training battles. This became necessary after the hunter woke up immediately with B rank. He appeared out of nowhere and is now one of the strongest hunters in the world. Lee Jun was the same hunter who woke up at S rank and dealt with all the goblins and their leader at the D rank gate. How a hunter can do something unreal from the very beginning of his awakening. They cannot miss such a diamond in their association. Sang-soo was hoping to see what this boy was capable of. The test started and the orc started running towards Lee Jun. The boy at that time activated the ability of the sinful angel and pierced the orc with a spear. He writhed in pain. His body was suffering. But it seemed that not everything was so easy. He was so dumb that he attacked relying only on his strength without any strategies. Everything happened more easily than Lee Jun expected. But the spear stuck in the orc's shoulder. And the hero could not get it and felt the real power of the orc. He grabbed the spear first. And then he hit Lee Jun with all his might. But it was lucky that he managed to put up a shield. Students discussed what was happening in the arena. They considered it very dangerous. And in general, giving an orc for a test at the very beginning is nonsense. The instructor must stop him. The lunge was perfect. If another person had been in his place, she would surely have died from such an attack. However, his opponent is a monster that the teacher underestimated. He continued to attack the boy. Sang-soo thought if he didn't intervene, things could end badly. He had even prepared his weapon. But when he already wanted to stop this fight, Lee Jun completely seized the initiative. He began, thanks to his agility, to outplay the opponent and inflict more and more blows on him. He had enough shield and spear to dominate this battle. His eyes glowed with aggression. His every stroke was unique and powerful. The guy didn't miss a beat. The students did not understand who it was. He didn't look like a rookie at all. He pressed the spear to upset the balance of the orc. Where did he have such instincts? He managed to defeat the orc in class. Sang-Soo noticed that he had used the ability. Hunters who have just awakened cannot have abilities. He didn't even cast any spells. So it was a high-ranking ability. His shield lost its power after the victory. This is the first time this has happened since the beginning of the Hunter era. His level rose again. Fire mastery increased to level 2. Sang-Soo knew they couldn't miss him. He was obliged to recruit him into the association, and it did not matter how. It was amazing. The teacher announced the passing of the test. It seems that his weapon can't stand it. Mastery of fire was an amazing ability. Mastery over fire is the foundation of the Demon King's power, and he has used it since the very beginning of becoming a hunter. It could be considered not an ability, but a power. As opposed to skills that cannot be upgraded except with the support of patrons. It can also be enhanced even at the expense of the player's characteristics. But the ammunition simply cannot withstand so much unreal power. In order to use this ability, Lee Jun needs equipment that is at least made of metal. The evening was approaching. It was dark outside and night was approaching. Lee Jun invited Song-gu and association representative Kim to the housewarming party. Song-gu immediately said that he wasn't sure he should be here at all. But the boy said that this is his housewarming party and he himself decides who to invite. They chatted a bit over dinner. At the expense of the seminar and the test that was waiting for him. And also places where they would like to go. Kim Soo was appointed curator by Lee Jun. The final test of the seminar classes should be tomorrow. And as far as Kim Soo knew, he would pass at the gate, but he was sure that Lee Jun would have no problem passing this test. Song-gu decided to bring up the subject of the future. And asked the boy what he decided on his offer. He didn't know what it was about, but everything inside told him not to let Lee Jun go. Kim Soo thought the atmosphere was heating up. One of the best guilds in Korea is trying to recruit him. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Lee Jun. Song-gu didn't want to pressure the boy anyway. The boy paused in their conversation. His face showed that he was hesitating. But as a result, he still refuses. Song-gu was upset. He asked about the reason for the refusal. Because he himself did not understand how it is possible to refuse such a thing. He thought it was a nice enough proposition for someone who wanted to become an active hunter. He was right, but when he first returned to the past, he compared all possible scenarios for the development of the future. And in the version where he gets close to Song-gu so early, it was very dangerous. The boy replied that he did not want to join any organization yet. But if they need his help, he will gladly help solve any issue. Until that moment, he will pay for his rescue at the gate. Song-gu was happy and shook Lee Jun's hand. Kim Soo did not understand at all what was happening. Is a rookie going to help one of the strongest A-rank hunters in Korea? And this A-rank hunter took this offer seriously. Kim Soo hoped that one day he would begin to understand the hunters after all. Graduation testing is due today. Before starting, Sang-Soo wanted to say a few words about the examination process. The venue will be the gate. However, there is no reason to be nervous. Since Sang-Soo will always be nearby and will be able to protect them when the opportunity arises. He was high enough in rank to be so sure. All the students froze in place and did not make a single sound. This B-rank hunter possessed magical power that surpassed all the disciples here. They were to leave the gate after obtaining all the necessary supplies. Lee Jun noticed that he entered the gate and noticed that the air was somewhat viscous. His classmates also felt it. Sang Su immediately said a few words about it. This happened because there was a very powerful magical force inside the gate. If everyone is gathered, then it's time to move. When they faced the monsters, he asked to follow his instructions. They walked a short distance from the entrance and the teacher asked everyone to stop, in order to check the territory. Ahead was a bunch of goblins who had smelled them and were heading towards them. They were very hungry, so they were ready to do anything to get food. Sang Su ordered hunters number 1 and number 3 to prepare their weapons for battle. They held together and raised their weapons. They began to destroy the enemy. These 2 students did quite well in their task and destroyed the goblins. They demonstrated their skills in practice. The teacher called to prepare number 8 and 16. They very cohesively and technically killed the rest of the goblins. It was their first full fight. He then called upon the hunter Li Jun. He jumped out very sharply. The students who were nearby did not even notice this. He attacked the rest of the goblins even without his special abilities. They seemed to him just a warm-up. He cut them in half one by one. Even a teacher could envy his skills. The students along with Sang Su were shocked and didn't even have time to watch every trick of Li Jun. They weren't sure if he had just woken up. And what was the point of his study here at all? Are all hunters like that? How perfectly he wields weapons is simply amazing. He is as skilled as a B rank hunter. They could not lose him and simply have to get this genius. Li Jun, meanwhile, had raised his level again thanks to the fact that he had destroyed quite a few goblins. They continued on their way. But they moved from one dimension to another. Soon they should reach the main boss. He is different from the other goblins they have met before. Therefore, they need to be more careful. Sang Su asked them to get ready and drink the potion. Check all weapons and equipment. Everyone began to follow Sang Su's instructions. And Li Jun thought that the Demon King had the power of a player. He was killed by 12 heroes before he could release his full power. This would not have happened if he had not progressed faster than them. Therefore, he needs to become even stronger as soon as possible, so that he could become more convincing. Stronger than the 12 heroes of Eden or anyone else. Sang Su said they needed to move on. The more they moved into the depth of the gate, the stronger the magical power felt. When they reached the source of this power, they were not even visible. Their bodies were completely enveloped in clouds of magic. They moved side by side to help each other. In case of danger, they had to act according to the instructions. Li Jun also couldn't understand where she was coming from. Sang Su started yelling for everyone to back off and move towards the exit. As soon as they started to retreat from that place, there was a huge shot of fire. All the students ran to a safe distance. The teacher was the last to leave. He had to either dodge the bullet or face it. He managed to look around several more times. He chose to resist. Sang Su began to slow down to use his superpower. But this magical attack was incredibly powerful. He could barely restrain her so as not to die himself. It was a destructive force. That even the poisonous cliques could not completely repel this attack. He immediately began to look for his recruits with his eyes. They were led by Li Jun, who was ready to protect them from any enemy. Sang Su noticed that Li Jun was unbeatable during this attack. But he did not agree. Because he thought he was able to repel this attack only because Sang Su blocked most of the attack. Sinful Angel invites to destroy the great goblin sorcerer. If you answer this request, you can get a good reward. It was a large goblin sorcerer capable of destroying B-rank hunters with ease. It seemed to them that they were not in a low-level gate. There were indeed some problems with setting the level of danger for the gate. One way or another they had to escape. The only one who can fight him is the hunter Sang Su. He will not be an easy opponent for him. He asked everyone to leave the gate and call for reinforcements in the association. Li Jun asked for permission to fight him. The students were stunned by such an act. The teacher told him not to overestimate himself. It was known that he had already defeated many goblins and even an orc. But the abilities of the great goblin sorcerer are not based on physical strength, but on magical strength. His magical attacks can easily kill a B-rank hunter. The great goblin sorcerer has fire magic. The main skills are fire arrows, fireball, wall of fire and flame shield. Li Jun knows that this monster is strong and he knows how to fight it. The monsters that were in this dimension are designed so that beginners can easily defeat them. So he asked to give them a chance. Sang Su was sure that it was blind arrogance and nothing more. But he still decided to allow the fight. Li Jun prepared himself and started a duel with the sorcerer goblin. The goblin used all his advantages. Fire arrows and fire shield. But Li Jun tried to hold back these attacks. The goblin used massed bullet attacks. But it was a good thing that Li Jun was agile and could dodge all the blows. The students noticed that he was able to completely repel the fireball. Sang Su also noticed this and was shocked. Because he did not block it, but absorbed it. How did he do it? Li Jun tried to attack from different directions. But all his attempts ended in failure. It was impossible to get to him through the fire shield. He was really very strong. And most importantly, it is not clear how it can be defeated. They were wrong and most likely they will not be able to cope. They will simply be smeared with long-range magic. The goblin looked at Li Jun. And the boy used the splitting power. It is only available when a certain level is reached. The fire simply spread over Li Jun. He could easily get the goblin because he was now defenseless. Sang Su thought it impossible. Mastery of fire is an unsurpassed ability. And with her help, Li Jun was able to make his way to the goblin. The boy rushed to him. Although the goblin tried to use some protective abilities, it did not make any sense. Because the main task was to get rid of the fire shield. And as a result, he destroyed it with a spear blow. The sorcerer seemed to dissolve into thin air. The students could not believe that he managed to do it. It was a super rookie. The mission was accomplished. The sinful angel was delighted. In connection with the successful completion of the mission, the sinful angel will become his patron. He is given the opportunity to fulfill the call of the familiar. He had wanted this ability for a long time. Another skill that made the Demon King so invincible. Meanwhile, Sang Su went with a report to the Hunter Association. He went to see the president. He realized that the reason he wanted to meet him so much had happened during the last final test. And it was all because of an S-rank hunter. And indeed the president was right. He guessed that his rank was much lower. But Sang Su replied that this time it was the other way around. The president had a lot of confidence in Sang Su. So when he said things like that, it was definitely true. He asked his opinion on how much potential this guy had. Sang Su replied that the situation is such that it is possible that the goal to which the president is so eager can be achieved. The president was quite restrained in his answer. But he wanted to meet Li Jun sooner. The next day, the boy met with representatives of the higher league Song Gu and Kim Su. They expected to see him with the head of a major league guild. Kim Su said that he was very worried when it was revealed that the rank of that gate had increased from rank E to rank S. But apparently it didn't cause any problems. Song Gu asked if Li Jun had received an invitation to join the association yet. The boy thought about it because it was offered to him as soon as he defeated the sorcerer goblin. Sang Su approached him and made a favorable offer based on his emotions. Students saw with their own eyes how this is recruited into the association. But he replied that he still has no desire to associate himself with joining any group. Sang-soo was surprised that the boy rejected his perfect proposal that everyone dreams of. But he said as if he understood him. If he had joined the association, he would have advanced much faster. But if he does it, he won't be able to hide anything from them. And this man was part of the association. He must not contact him under any circumstances. He must avoid him at all costs. Song-gu asked if Lee Jun had any food preferences. This was a much more difficult question for him than being recruited by the association. Maybe ramen. Song-gu asked if he likes meat. Lee Jun immediately started drooling. And then Song-gu hugged him and offered to go eat tons of meat. The boy returned home. And immediately decided to take a shower. Memories of the fight with the goblin immediately began to appear in his head. He went through every shot and defense in his head. Was everything done with sufficient quality? The boy analyzed his every step. It was important for him to become stronger every day, with every fight. He also thought about his current status. None of the normal hunters are able to summon a familiar. Only 12 heroes. Only a handful of people had this ability. Thanks to her, he was able to accomplish all these feats. Therefore, it is not surprising that he managed to defeat countless bone dragon-like monsters. He gained the same powers that the Demon King once had. Then the summoned familiars should be no worse than his. He had one chance to summon a familiar guaranteed by the sinful angel. And he decided to use it right now. The next day, Lee Jun came to the big league. He was waiting for Kim Soo there. When he entered the office, he immediately decided to share the interesting news that the media had published news related to Lee Jun. It said that a super rookie had defeated a dungeon boss that only an A-rank hunter could kill. Kim Soo said he heard about it. And it was not clear to him, just like the rest, how he managed to do it. And why didn't he tell about it last night? He got to the first line, but there is no personal information about him on it. But most likely, the higher ranks in the association already had it. Hunters have recently become more popular than most idols. But it didn't seem like Lee Jun was even interested in it. The boy said that he had much more important things to discuss with Kim Soo. The representative immediately asked what it was. The guy said he wanted to take part in clearing the dungeons. He would go into dungeons and destroy level 1 goblins and other monsters. It was training and leveling up for him. He wanted to activate the familiar, but in order to do so, he believed that it was necessary to destroy monsters. He continued because he remembered his promise. Lee Jun had to quickly become the strongest. To have sufficient influence on others. And so he cleared his first dungeon. Lee Jun turned his attention to his bracelet and it didn't react at all to all the monsters he killed, even after the death of the boss. And he did not understand how to use it at all. The familiar must be unrealistically powerful or endowed with special skills. But he does not manage to absorb a single soul. All along he thought that monster souls were needed, was he wrong? When Lee Jun cleared the dungeon, he was met by Kim Soo. The man greeted him. He completed his 4th dungeon raid. If he has any items he wants to auction, he can give them to Kim Soo. He must have dealt with the inventory. As soon as the item is sold at the auction, the funds will immediately go to his account. He asked when he could enter the next gate. Kim Soo said that unfortunately he doesn't have a gate that can be reserved right now. It was very strange. The world is literally torn apart by gates that cannot be closed, but he cannot reserve even one for himself. Kim Soo replied that a guild had recently appeared that was gradually building its name. They single-handedly reserved about 20 low-level gates. Even if they are low-level, one single guild was able to reserve all 20 for themselves. Usually the association rejects such requests, but since all previously reserved gates have been cleared, They had no choice but to grant this request. Li Jun guessed that the head of this guild might be called Choi Sung. Kim Soo confirmed this information. This is the guild of the Army of the North. It was founded by Choi Sun, who was nicknamed Super Rookie before Li Jun appeared. Soon this person will earn the title of hero and establish himself as a subordinate of the 12 gods. And besides, he will become famous as a merciless killer and an absolute tyrant. Finally, he will meet him. It was raining heavily. People demanded to stop the construction and gathered in dire protests. The assistant told the manager that these rallies were getting out of control, what to do next. He said that they are nothing but ants. If they destroy their home here, they will build a new one somewhere else. There is no reason to worry about the lives of ants. Even if they let these slaves survive, they will still be unhappy. This was the method of ruling the head of the Army of the North. They relied only on aggression and evil. These people could only blackmail humanity for their needs. They are absolutely not interested in human values. After that incident, half of the residents of the village where Li Jun lived died. It was a terrible tragedy. He remembered her very well in detail. Li Jun heard someone calling for help in the nearby street. It was a man's voice. He saw how several hunters beat and robbed an ordinary townsman. They provoked him in order to find an excuse for abuse and torture. These were not hunters, but real bandits. He begged them to stop and not mock him. Li Jun approached them and asked what they were doing and how they could afford it. Moreover, this person was weaker than them. They mockingly asked who he was. The guy replied that he just heard strange sounds and came up. He thinks they are bullies. One of the bandits started shouting and did not allow such rude communication with him. Li Jun said that they were the first to start acting like this. They were scared because they realized that a real hunter was in front of them. Li Jun turned to the man and asked what had happened to him and why they were picking on him. One of the boys replied that this grandfather had injured him with his cart. And he simply demanded his compensation from him. Grandpa stood up and said it was a lie. Because they were the first to throw his cart and start beating him. Li Jun asked why they broke the grandfather's cart. Since he was also a hunter, he should understand. Everyone who attacks him challenges him. Therefore, he saw no problem in the fact that he broke it. He was already beginning to perceive all of Li Jun's actions as an attack in his direction. Jun said he was letting them go quietly because they had done enough. He will be able to let them go, since they did not seem to cause any serious damage to the grandfather. But it didn't suit them, and one of the boys pounced on Li Jun. But he shouted that no one dares to order him. He dodged the blow. Then he grabbed the hand of the bandit, after which he threw him over him. He ended up on the ground. Now he was not so brave and rude. There is one more offender left. Because the first one was unconscious. The next one had already drawn his weapon. Li Jun never thought he would see a weapon in such a place. The hooligan seemed quite sure of what would happen next. He asked if Jun had a guild yet. Therefore, they believed that they were on a completely different level than such garbage. Li Jun maimed the other bully without any problem. He skillfully knocked the weapon out of his hands and ended this circus. If he didn't understand guilds, he would have thought that their guild was no more than a mother's under her skirt. After eliminating them, Li Jun called the relevant agency to prosecute them. But they continued to prove that grandfather attacked them first. Kim Soo thanked him for understanding this situation and helping them. One way or another, an attack by a hunter on an ordinary person is a very serious crime. Kim Soo confirmed this. And he said that this is all the concern of the association and thanked him for his help. They saw two men talking. They were worried that the guild would want to take revenge on their grandfather. But the association would definitely look after and protect him, so there was no point in them worrying. Li Jun remembered that one of the bullies was in the guild, but where was she? It just so happened that this was the Northern Army Li Jun had asked about earlier. It was impossible to take all the low-level gate contracts without help from the inside. The Guild of the Northern Army and the Rotten Hunters from the very middle of the association. Li Yong had hoped that they would be much quieter, but that was simply not possible. As expected, 2 days later, Li Yong was called up to the association as a striker. A few days passed and the grandfather whom Li Jun saved changed his testimony. Those who attacked him became innocent. And Li Jun, who helped the old man, became the attacker. He understood everything, but still felt bad because of this injustice. Kim Soo asked not to be nervous about it. In any case, everything will be fine. The association is not so rotten yet. What he didn't know was that for Li Jun from the future, the association was rotten from its inception. Kim Soo invited the boy inside. He was asked if he did not remember anything from the moment of the incident at the gate. He replied that it was true. As well as the incident that happened a few days ago, he was the first to report everything and detained members of the Northern Army. The guy confirmed everything. He was asked if it was true that he had put old man Lee Moon's life in danger and had given false testimony about the North Korean guild members at the expense of the first attacker. Lee Jung said it was a lie. He was asked if he wanted to say that all their testimony was a lie. The guy replied that it was true. An elderly man who was a participant in this situation was called into the room. This man was asked if it was true that Lee Jun attacked him. Because he testified that members of North Korea attacked the man and him. He looked away because he understood that he would have to lie. He was blackmailed and everything went rotten, as expected. He asked the man not to worry because he already knew the truth. Grandfather said that Lee Jun attacked him. The man thanked his grandfather and said that he could go. He left the interrogation room. But it was clear from his eyes and behavior that he had no other choice now. His face was tired. Most likely, he was threatened with the massacre of his loved ones. The worker asked if Lee Jun had anything to add to what was said. The guy threw the phone on the table, on which he filmed absolutely everything that happened that day on that street. The employee was shocked. But he was forced to accept this evidence and provide it to the investigation. That was all he wanted to add to his words. In any case, the association knew why the testimony had changed, but only the grandfather would be prosecuted for false testimony. And he cannot do anything in this situation. He still lacked strength. Song-gu has already seen the news. They met Lee Jun again. Kim Soo called Song-gu because he no longer has any connections in the association. Of all the contacts that remained, he was the most influential person he could contact. Lee Jun thanked them both for making time for him. All Song-gu could say was that Lee Jun was on the loose. While they were talking, the grandfather who was being protected by Lee Jun came up. He began to fall to his knees and beg for forgiveness. These bastards said they would kill his granddaughter soon if he didn't say what they demanded. He just couldn't let that happen. Instead of helping, he brought even more problems. Kim Soo didn't understand, if the Northern Army was blackmailing him, then why he decided to tell about it only here and now. If he had said it earlier, his granddaughter would have been in danger. But what has already been done cannot be changed and now he can only ask for forgiveness and pray. Song-gu promised that his granddaughter would be safe and he would take care of it personally. He asked not to worry about these bastards and to go home. He listened to Song-gu got up and went home. Lee Jun developed a habit of filming everything because he had been in such situations so many times. From this day on, he must not let anything out of his sight. They continued to chat and saw the president of the Northern Guild passing nearby. At first they exchanged glances. Song-gu and Lee Jun were surprised to see him here. because he usually doesn't leave his office. He approached and said that he could not even believe that he could meet the head of one of the largest guilds here. He asked if they were that close to the newcomer about whom there were so many rumors. Kim Soo did not understand how he found out about all this. Is the worm in the association his personal informant? He held out his hand and introduced himself as the head of the Army of the North. His name is Choi Song. Song-gu thought about it, but then shook his hand. It was a long handshake. He tried to pretend that he was glad to meet him. He decided to warn him. And he said that he should not be so arrogant if he does not want to become an enemy for him and this newcomer. Choi Sung took his hand away and was offended at how he was treated. He was even scared. Because no one could talk to him like that before. Song-gu even decided to paraphrase his speech a bit. He said that Choi Sung would never match him in life and advised him to be more careful if he didn't want to die. Kim Soo and Lee Jun were sitting in a cafe, where they discussed the situation that happened. Kim Soo still couldn't come to terms with the fact that they were just fined when they tried to kill an innocent person. In the future, hunters are untouchable. After Lee Jun was called to the police because he protected an ordinary man from the abuse of thugs from the Northern Association, they were released from custody almost immediately and just issued a small fine and found him guilty. Then the boy realized that their president is trying to bribe everyone who prevents him from making money and lining his pockets. But the boy was not going to give up and do whatever this person ordered. He wanted revenge. Lee Jun believed in the power of revenge like anything else. The next day, Jun and Sun stood outside in full combat readiness. They had bulletproof vests and additional ammunition in addition to weapons. They were going to enter the gate together. Sun told the boy that he never thought that he would contact him for a joint trip to the gate. But he noted that this time the gates were of a much higher rank than those he had passed before. That is why he asked him for support, so that someone could take care of the boy if he was seriously injured. Sun considered it a great honor to fight alongside this boy, because he possessed great strength and the man did not know anyone who could defeat him in an even fight. To approach them because it seemed to them that it was the same famous rookie who cleared gates of almost any level without the help of other fighters. They also said that it was an honor for them to fight alongside him. After they saved him from that gate, they could not even imagine that they would one day manage to go to the gate together. The commander introduced the boys. One of them was called Choi, the other Hun. The two of them were the ones who saved Lee Jun that day. And it is clear that they were members of their guild. The boy was very happy to meet the people who gave him the opportunity to change this world now. He thanked and introduced himself. He did not remember that their names or faces had somehow met in history. But there was nothing surprising, because the story about the demonic king and the entire guild of the higher league was erased from all pages. The commander began to open the S-rank gate. They faced a very responsible mission. The time has come to fulfill one's duties to the country, and he called to start a campaign in the dungeons. All the fighters were waiting for the portal to open as wide as possible so that they could enter it. There were quite a lot of them, but at the head was the commander and Lee Jin. In the place of deployment of the Gunter Guild, there were exquisite works of art on the example of paintings. Their leaders decided the further fate of the guild and discussed plans that could speed up their approach to the goal. The deputy head of the guild, Choi Eng, said that they cannot leave this situation so easily. They just started confidently conquering new territories. The knight in armor asked him if it would not be better to increase their influence in the already conquered territories before capturing others. Because everything can turn in the other direction and they will lose the conquered territories and will not find more strength to capture new ones. Moreover, after the last incident, it was noticeable that the members of their guild were getting out of control. Another deputy chairman, John N., said this. Choi replied that these rascals were definitely wrong. Ordinary people are ordinary cockroaches who live only at the expense of protecting hunters. He did not even think that they would one day bow their heads and apologize to these cockroaches. John very angry. He showed with all his appearance that he was not going to tolerate such behavior. Choi grabbed his chair to prepare for a surprise attack. He asked if John wanted to fight this issue with him. Both of them began to emit extra energy, which signals a complete readiness for battle. But only the head of the guild could stop it. He entered the room and ordered them to calm down. He waved his hand and said that Choi was right. John didn't like it at all. He was brought up differently, and that's why it was humiliating for him to behave like that with the weaker ones. And Choi, on the contrary, flaunted his position, and a high-minded smile appeared on his face. The chairman said that for daring to accuse them, they should bear the deserved punishment in full. He was interested in this no less. John was confused. Even through his armor you could see his displeasure. The chairman added that this personality said the same thing as he. Most likely, he also has an interest in this tall animal. The deputy could not believe that it was true. He said that soon the stage will be set and they just need to wait for his signal. Because defeat is unacceptable for the army of the north. Meanwhile, in the dungeon, the fighters tried to deactivate all the traps that came across their way. The girl dealt with this issue. A few minutes were enough for her to neutralize all the traps and clear the way. After the inspection, she allowed us to go on without any danger. The one who sees what he doesn't need to see always smiles. The commander stood in front of his group and announced the start of the sweep. They went forward. Not even having passed a few steps from the temporary location, a wave of arrows was fired at them. Each of the fighters had special protection and used it as needed. One of the boys used a fireball to attack the enemy. Thanks to this, a huge explosion took place in the place where the enemy was stationed. June thought that he could learn most of them. He saw the hunters for the first time in a real battle. Sun was also not going to stand aside and immediately joined the battle. He attacked monsters with his flaming sword, which could destroy several enemies with one blow. The monsters were in a panic. They thoughtlessly ran at the boys, for which they paid the price. Sun was able to destroy more than 50 monsters with several such blows and ended this battle almost single-handedly. Lee Jun watched the skills he used and was in awe of the commander's technique and intelligence. When he recovered, he thanked the boy for such a compliment for the old warrior. But Jun replied that he was the one who asked for help and he should be the one to thank. Sun asked to be honest with him. Because he believes that the boy just wanted to see how powerful he and his guild are. What is she capable of? The guild of the higher league was very strong and Sun was unsurpassed in it. He was so powerful, although he didn't even show what he was really capable of. One of the fighters said that they also don't mind seeing what the super rookie is capable of. The commander listened to him and also agreed with his opinion. The boy replied that he understood their request and he had no need to hide his abilities from Sun and the entire guild. They waited for a new wave of monsters, among which were trolls and orcs. Jun a chance to prove himself and he accepted the challenge and sharpened his spear before the battle. When the monsters came very close, he activated his abilities. The boys were shocked to see that he could activate his skill without using a spell. He has already learned high-level abilities. He was really a super novice. He was very sharp and could cut several monsters at the same time with one blow. Flaming spear and shield was not an ability. It was power. He cleared the dungeons of goblin wizards. The fallen angel strengthened his skills. Some characteristics have also increased slightly. When they returned from the dungeon, the boys approached Jun to discuss the sweep. They believed that he was called a super rookie for a reason. Even the head was not at such a high level. Although they respect him very much. The guy started yelling at Sun and blamed him for losing such a talent and not recruiting him to their guild. Such a warrior would raise their level several times. Sun was at first confused, because the boy began to speak sharply in his direction. But then he started to smile. He replied that his offer is still relevant. Their guild was very strong indeed and continued to grow stronger. Sun saw that June had to go through a lot of trials in his life up to this point. He was right. He has already managed to understand his inclinations and goals. The one he knew did not possess such powers of prediction. He continued that the scumbags from the Northern Army will not sit here. If he joins their guild, it will be much more difficult for them to harm him because they will meet a lot of resistance. Sun made a decision and offered the boy to join a higher guild and he would give him the position of guild chairman. His subordinates were shocked by such a proposal. They did not expect that the commander would take such a step. In fact, even Li Jun himself was confused. He could have expected the position of deputy chairman, but he did not foresee this. He replied that he appreciated his offer very much, but was forced to refuse this time as well. Sun was not offended at all and saw no reason to express his sympathy. Because he saw that his eyes were looking at something grander. While they were talking, Li Jun received a message on his phone. He got it and was shocked again. A lot happened in his life. He was forced to become more cold-blooded than anyone in order to survive and achieve his goal. The message said that the Hunters Association needs his help. The Army of the North and about 100 hunters. The boy began to think about this message. He definitely couldn't be sent by the guild head and Choi's deputy. They simply cannot let go of someone who stands in their way. Order on the mobilization of hunters. The Army of the North and another 100 hunters. Considering that the largest guild is the Northern Army. It was very suspicious. Did Choi use the association? It was the most realistic. Meanwhile, in the main office of the Guild of the North, John remained alone until late at night. He could not come to terms with the fact that his opinion is no longer accepted here. He did not even notice when they had time to change so much for the worse. Choi Eng, whom he knew since childhood, and his older brother. Everything changed from the moment they met that person. Military, but warm-hearted, Choi no longer regarded ordinary people as something important. And the head of the guild considers everyone around him to be worse than himself, regardless of whether they are hunters or ordinary people. They are trying to kill the hunter only for the reason that his actions push the Army of the North to the deterioration of authority. The Guild of the Northern Army has rotted from the inside. And her honor cannot be restored. But he cannot leave these two people. He put the phone in front of him and tried to make the most logical and correct decision, primarily for himself. Because the further fate of the Northern Guild will depend on it. There was justice on one side, and friendship on the other. It happened in an abandoned warehouse, which was half destroyed. John and June met. The guy said that he was glad to meet him and introduced himself. But John refused to introduce himself. He no longer felt the presence of other people here. Did he really come to the meeting himself? The guy said that they were there, just the two of them. No traps, so he may not worry about it. The knight said that he was here to tell him one thing. He must receive an order from the association to mobilize and to reject it. June did not understand anything and asked why he should reject him. He replied that their entire guild was also mobilizing. Since he only recently became a hunter, he probably does not know, but hunters are much more terrible than he could imagine. Especially their head. He is not the best person. It is very dangerous to meet him even just on the street. If he enters the gate with him, it will become a big problem. June tried to find out what he was planning to do. If it is dangerous to meet him on the street and enter the gate together, then it turns out that the Guild of the Northern Army. This is a guild of chaos, which over time gains more and more progress and spreads to each member of the guild. Demons were also among the patrons. They gave tasks for killing people or tasks for mass murders. The guilds that were formed by a group of such people were called the Chaos Guild. This angered the deputy head, but the boy was sure that he himself tried to tell him about it, but he did not have the courage to pour mud on his guild. But if he didn't mean it, there was no need to warn him about the danger. When he heard the phrase Chaos Guild, he had nothing to say. Because his relationship with the Northern Army Guild turned out like this from the very beginning. John probably didn't like the guy's attitude towards him and his brainchild. Therefore, he drew his sword and wanted to explain that he was actually wrong and misunderstood everything. The energy was so strong that the whole structure trembled. He told June not to dare to humiliate their guild. But the boy replied that they themselves should understand. That the guild of the Army of the North is rotten to the bone. The head and deputy head, whom he trusted all the time, became completely different people. And it all started from the moment when they met the same personality that he followed. The man was still able to control his emotions and their conversation ended. This guy became a hunter just a month ago. Even without looking at his fast pumping, just think that he was not weaker than him. He believed that they found everything they knew about him. He knew that John would not attack him. Can he really read minds and even know about the same personality? He couldn't understand who this Li Jun really was. He didn't look like a person at all. Chung In Chong. He was also called Siegfried the Dragon Slayer, but his most popular name is the Immortal Siegfried. It was he who managed to overcome the most dangerous monster of the demonic king. After that he received unprecedented power from his patron. He was given immortality. And in the upcoming battle against the demonic king, when he received an order from his close friend, he was unlucky to become a hero because Choi Yang killed him. The guy understood that he had to lure him to his side. He may have strength and skills, but the most important reason why he needs him is moral principles. In the rotten Army of the North, only he kept the balance inside. Li Jun was very fond of thinking about the future when he was clearing dungeons. He could do two useful things at the same time. The first is to clear dungeons and raise your level, the second is to think of a strategy to achieve your goals. He dealt with another dungeon of the dead. His weapon strength dropped to 0 after the battle. His weapon simply cannot withstand the power of mastery over fire. It seems that he has one more task to complete before mobilizing the hunters. He needs a weapon. The first thing that came to his mind was to beat up the local blacksmith. When he entered there, everything around looked like a medieval forge. The master was busy with his work, so the boy had to wait a little. He looked very focused and it was obvious that he enjoyed his work. June could never have thought that he would be able to meet him in person. One of the hunters who became a dwarf after waking up. A person who will soon become a wandering blacksmith, a hero of all hammersmiths. His name was Pak Hyun. His work continued for 4 hours and only after that he left the hammer. Pak began to look for the guy who was waiting for him. And I decided to start by finding out who he is and why I came to him. He had to wait for 4 hours, and he just now decided to ask who he was. June said that he came to order weapons. He also asked if there were blacksmiths in this place, besides him. For Pak it looked very strange, because he himself came to the nameless blacksmith for weapons and asks if he works here himself. The boy replied that he asked only because he saw another blacksmith's hammer in the corner. Pak thought at first, then remembered which hammer we were talking about. He emphasized June's attentiveness and said that this hammer belonged to one guy, but it was not important. Pak asked why he chose him and how he learned about him in the first place. Before that, he had never made ammunition. It was all for fun, nothing more. The boy replied that he was directed by his patron. He told June to go to him. The boy's facial expression immediately changed. He could not believe that his patron was working directly with him. But he had no other choice but to believe him, as he himself felt the direct influence of his patron on his life. Pak was so famous that his patron directly interfered in the blacksmith's life. This was written in the autobiography of the demonic king. The one who created all the weapons for the Demon King was Pak Hyun. But due to the influence of 12 heroes, they were scattered all over the world. Pak supplied weapons to only 12 heroes. The demonic king wrote that if only Pak had stayed by his side until the very end, they would have changed history. Considering how strange these patrons are, he would have no reason not to trust Lee Jun. But he could not create anything for him. Jun thought that he was in a bad mood today and asked what the reason was. He was simply not very friendly with fire, so he had never accepted orders from customers until this moment. Then the boy realized that the reason was not that he did not want to do it. Then Lee Jun came closer to the boy and extended his hand to him. Pak did not understand what this meant and asked why he stretched his hand forward. Jun replied that he would create the flame for him, which he would need to create the weapon. After a second, a red flame appeared on his hand, which looked perfect. The boy asked if Pak was familiar with the ability to control fire. That is, he wanted to say that he can control this small flame in his palm. It was funny. If he had such a close relationship with fire, then even a blacksmith like him. The guy didn't have time to finish, as he saw something that he did not expect to see. A blue flame appeared in his hand. Pak began to ask how he managed it. He had the power to control the fire as he wished. And it was not ordinary possession, but complete subjugation. What he saw completely changed his opinion and attitude towards the boy. A week later, Jun came to pick up his new weapon, which would no longer break after clearing a dungeon and would be resistant to fire. When Lee Jun took him in his hands, he understood why this boy had made weapons for the strongest people in the world in the past. But he said that he would not be able to make the shield that he asked for. As they discussed before, he will not be able to do it alone. But if we talk about what he asked for, then inside this spear was the ability to control fire. He did everything in his power. The spear looked really very powerful and capable of a lot. He hated to say it, but with his current strength, that was all he was capable of right now. This spear increased control over fire. The characteristics of the spear increased when interacting with fire. He said that it was the best thing he could do. But even if he is a famous blacksmith, this weapon is of an unrealistically rare type. For something more, direct intervention of the patron will be required. But there are weapons that improve over time. If he had at least one similar weapon, he would not have to change it anymore. Pak said that this spear was not yet completely finished. That guy wasn't here yet, so for his flame, this weapon is still low level. He must return. But don't be too late, but try to come as early as possible. If he comes in time, then Pak will be able to strengthen him. Then he decided to leave it to him. Pak noticed an unusual bracelet on Lee Jun's hand. He guessed that this bracelet on his hand was given to him by his patron. It seems that his sponsor was not quite an ordinary guy either. Pak had a bad feeling and said he didn't think it should be used at all. It was the skull of the Keeper of Souls. In order for it to be activated, it was necessary to absorb at least one soul, but now activation was impossible. He spoke correctly. It was just a guess, but if he is right. The boy believed that it would be difficult to fulfill the challenge while he was participating in the mobilization of hunters. But he felt the power of his new weapon. And it was much more than he expected to get. If he manages to lure John to his side, he will have more chances to win. The situation is getting more complicated, but if everything goes as it was written in the book, it will definitely give him an advantage. There are 2 weeks left before the mobilization of hunters. He had to become stronger, and that's why he needs to clear a lot of dungeons, because he has a feature that allows him to level up by killing monsters. He was no longer afraid of crowds of monsters, he destroyed them very easily. Especially when they were low-level dungeons. Thus, he needed to reach a certain level to be competitive. But even if he has the opportunity to become stronger thanks to hunting, then 2 weeks is not enough. Even sleep will be an ordinary waste of time. 2 weeks later, the time for general mobilization came. A notification came that the owner paid attention to everyone. They gathered in the hall of their office. Everyone had to prepare. The owner announced the completion of all preparations. He hoped that this day would go down in history and the army of the North would emerge from the shadows. In Korea and around the world, everyone should learn about the army of the North. His eyes burned with cold fire. He wanted only revenge and the whole world to obey him. By his example, he set up every soldier and made him believe that they were doing the right thing. John noticed that Choi had crazy magical power. He was finally able to reach a rank unsurpassed. Everything was exactly as the owner said. All requirements for becoming a hero have been fulfilled. After a short pause and silence, the owner shouted that there was power for the whole hall. That the world will tremble on behalf of the Guild of the Army of the North. He was supported by absolutely every fighter. They believed that the ruler could not be wrong. But he wanted to use his power and his warriors only to get the title of King of the World. Meanwhile, Lee Jun and Kim were driving in the car. Kim asked the boy if he really wanted to go and join the mobilized warriors of the Northern Guild. Because he believed that Jun would die, the more he told him absolutely everything he knew about the hidden values and intentions of the Army of the North. They are much more terrible than they say. The guild, which last time tried to go on a raid with the Army of the North, was destroyed. This was enough to understand their essence. Jun pretended to guess their terrible deeds. Kim was shocked and decided to pull over to the side of the road because he might lose control. He tried to find the words to talk the boy out of going to this hell. Jun tried to hold back and not reveal his secret. Because he knew much more than anyone else in this world. Kim said that he had no right to go there because he was a very important person in the association. Moreover, no one forced him to go there, and his life is the most important thing. He literally began to tremble and get angry at the same time. The boy begged Jun not to go there, at least for his own safety. But Jun seemed to laugh at him and sat next to him and smiled. Then he replied that Kim says that there is nothing more important than one's own life. He calmed down and confirmed his words. He was well aware of this. He decided not to participate in the mobilization and hoped for the best. Jun promised that these scum will learn that life is not just a sound, but something precious. And now the portal is open for another dungeon raid. A lot of people gathered. And these were not only participants, but ordinary people and reporters. Fighters adjusted and prepared for new challenges. Journalists did their job and tried to get more information about the plans, tasks, and goals of the guilds in this raid. Jun met the head of the top league guild there and he heard that they gave up on the raid this time, but Sun came there anyway. The man replied that he had already declared that the Army of the North was their enemy, and he also declared that the super novice was his friend. Therefore, he could not be in another place. They met the head of the guild of the Army of the North. And he made it clear with all his appearance that they are determined to be as aggressive as possible and their plans will definitely not be liked by anyone. Sun's smile immediately disappeared from his face because his friend would be going there with those demons. He turned to Jun and asked if he would go there even if Sun asked him not to. The boy confirmed his words and he hoped that Sun was not here to dissuade him from the raid. Jun probably already knew this, but still Sun decided to repeat that this scumbag was much stronger than he thought. His officially registered association rank is B. It seems that he has already managed to rise to rank A. It was palpable. Sun was surprised by how strong Jun had become. It doesn't matter what will happen in the dungeon, because he is sure that the guy has a good plan. He already wanted to see how strong he would become. Therefore, he promised to wait for him near the portal. But the boy asked why he did this. He replied that if he did not leave the gate, Sun would not forgive them for this. June charged that Sun was ready to destroy the entire guild. The raid will start soon and the fighters had to finish their training and gather. Choi Sun will be the hero of Gunter. And the gate called the Rain River will kill countless people. Everyone was ready and entered the portal one by one. Lee Jun pushed the last thoughts out of his mind and also started to go inside with everyone. He wanted history to reverse its course of events at this point. They entered the Rain River Gate. Here he will receive all the glory that a true fighter for justice deserves. And finally they all entered these gates. It was the most dangerous gate in recent times. Each of the fighters knew absolutely nothing about this dungeon and went there blindly. The head of the army of the north was glad that everything had finally started. All that remains is to carry out your plan. Everyone received a notification that under the influence of the characteristics of the gate itself, the magical power had changed. The fighters did not understand what was happening. They saw such a message for the first time and no one warned them about it. Then they noticed that the gate's rank had gone from B to B+. June showed no emotion at all because he knew everything about this dungeon. If he had not known about it, he would never have left. New messages began to arrive. Gate feature activated. The exit from the gate is blocked. When some of the fighters wanted to leave the gate, it was immediately closed. It was no longer possible to leave them until it was cleared. Everyone started to panic because they were stuck here. The messages continued. A large number of awakened people gathered in one place. Patrons paid attention to this place. The density of magical power will grow. The bodies of the participants began to burn. No one understood what was happening and what actions needed to be taken to survive. Message. The awakened entered a special gate. Patrons' attention to this place has increased. The density of magical power will grow. The captain turned his attention to his tablet, which was informing them. And he was shocked. Something strange was happening with the gate rank. It went from a B+ level to an A level. No one expected or was ready for this at all. The captain dropped the tablet from his hands. They had no hope for life. June grabbed him by the collar and tried to find out more information about what was happening. Because only the captain had at least some information. But after the stupor, he began to look for a way out and shout that they were thrown into the gate of rank A. Gates of this rank are considered impossible to clear without a heroic hunter. Some hunters fell into despair. Their reaction is quite expected, because this place can become their grave. The head and deputies stood and watched it. They definitely knew about it and that's why they don't even react. It seems that this situation was exactly what they needed. The first wave of monsters was already very close and they needed to gather to at least try to fight for their survival. They simply had no other choice. The head of the Northern Guild finally spoke and asked everyone to calm down. He understood their anxiety, but according to him, he was no less shocked than they were. He also wanted to understand what led to this, but the gate is not so well researched. Unexpected things happen to them all the time. But now is definitely not the time to despair and start crying. Then the most important thing was to survive. And he, the head of the Northern Army, Choi Sun, promised that he would clean this gate with everyone who was in this dungeon. New message. The master of the stream tried to take possession of the stream. The mood of the fighters changed to a more positive one and they agreed that it was time to show their strength, and not to cry and fear new challenges. The master of the current. All incitement and command skills are tripled near the river. There is also a small chance to gain violent command over others. Due to the influence of the fallen angel, they had a resistance to forceful command. This was the power of the current ruler. All these hunters are simply incited. Choi asked the host if it might be worth starting already, but he answered no. According to what this person told them, the wave of these gates will continue for a very long time. The strength of their guild must be preserved as much as possible. Choi-eng was in a misunderstanding. The chairman ordered to follow the plan as they had agreed. The army of the north will keep its forces and in turn survive with the help of these forces. Was he going to kill all the soldiers? But he replied that he will not kill everyone, because they need those who will spread rumors. Their guild will keep their strength until he orders them to retreat. But Choi believed that hunters are not so stupid. They will follow his rule, but as soon as they understand that the northern army does not interfere much, everything will become clear to them. The chairman repeated what he had said as much as possible. They will send insects from their guild to help them, so that they do not have any suspicions. Choi realized that he was going to sacrifice even the guild members. Lee Jun looked at them all the time and did not look away. He knew their intentions. He only had to quickly build a plan on how to confront such rascals who are ready to kill their people for the sake of power. This confused the head, his eyes seemed to see through all his plans. They needed to kill him faster, so that it would not cause unnecessary worries. The chairman called John to him to give him a very important task. He approached, but did not even guess what he would have to do. Because of his good-hearted nature, the boss had to hide part of the plan from him, but there is no point in doubting his dedication and skills. He asked to continue to follow this idiot when he got the chance. He ordered to kill him, because he raises suspicions in the head. John understood that this had gone too far. When it all started, he had no idea that injustice could reach such a scale. Choi's son said that it would be better for them and for the Northern Guild itself. John thought about how he should act in such a case. If he does not fulfill this order, he will be recognized as a traitor. But if he does, he will betray his values and principles. There was already a wave of monsters. But very close. 2 warnings were received. Fighters have already seen these creatures. All they had to do was give all their strength to survive. These were unusual monsters, they were much stronger than trolls and orcs. But these pawns were still easy enough to defeat for their fighters. If they group together, it will be more difficult to defeat them, so it was necessary to attack sooner, until they gathered in a pile. June noticed that they were attacking without any formation. Even if they are low-level monsters, it is very stupid. Because they were in river and no one had faced such trials before. They attacked very confidently, but did not take into account many factors. These monsters were not as simple as they seemed. They used their ability and attacked the fighters. Whoever came under this attack could not continue the fight in the first ranks and was pushed to the end of the group. June ordered the wounded to be carried back, and ordered the rest to line up. They began to listen to Lee Jun's commands and do everything as he said. But it was still too early for him to intervene. To begin with, he needs to fully understand the situation. At this time, when all the fighters of other guilds were fighting off the enemy's attack, the army of the north under the leadership of Choi's son stood aside and did not participate at all. But then the head gave the command to attack the monsters and destroy them. Part of his army went to the line of contact with the enemy. Lee Jun thought it was impossible. He involved members of his guild. It was not included in any framework of morality. They continued to fight together with the monsters from the river. The captain supported them, because they were just mermen, they were no stronger than orcs. It really supported the boys and they fought very desperately. These monsters constantly harmed the participants of the raid. That is why doctors always tried to position themselves behind them, who immediately cured the soldiers with the help of their strength. But June noticed something. These guys who fought against the mermen. They were the lowest members of the northern army whom he sent to die so that there would be no reason to accuse him of anything. They used them without any remorse to raise the morale of other hunters. They were sacrificed like cattle. The guy decided that there was enough time for thinking, now it is necessary to get to work. Everything was much better than he had planned. June ran to help all raid participants defeat these monsters. First it was necessary to deal with them, and then to think about the head of the Army of the North. John wanted to approach him because he had a task on his mind. He hesitated a lot before doing it. Again he was faced with a choice. He remembered how the boy had said that the Guild of the North was rotten to the bone. The head and deputy head, whom he trusted so much, became different. And it all started from the moment when they met the same person they were following. John understood that the boy was not mistaken. The Army of the North is rotten. If everything continues like this, many hunters and members of their guild will die. The chairman believed in John's devotion. But he forgot even the meaning of this word and long ago acted only in his own interests. But he tried to convince himself that the head had a plan. If he was the one he knew before. When June joined the members' attack, they did not have time to follow his movements. He was unsurpassed. John overheard these conversations and decided to also see what was happening on the battlefield. The area where June fought the monsters was literally on fire. Thanks to his new weapon, he could destroy monsters much more actively and not be afraid that it would be damaged. The boys could not believe that such a hunter was participating in the gate raid. They were sure that they knew the names of all the cool hunters. John was also shocked because he had not seen the boy in battle at all. He pumped very well. Just 10 days ago, they were at the same level in all characteristics. But now he completely overpowered him. It was impossible, but you can't argue with facts. This wave was cleared. They were given time for a short break. Some patrons decided to give a small reward to the awakened ones. Notifications came very often. Its characteristics have improved. Marmon Slayer achievement received. The boy did not have time to reread all the messages he received. The keeper of the long spear became interested in him. The spherical representative was interested in him. The owner of everything wet became interested in him. Many sponsors watched him. But will he be able to use several patrons? The fallen angel expressed his displeasure. The patron who was interested in him. The boy could not understand why this happened. Many participants started running up to Li Jun and thanking him for his help. Because he broke almost half of the entire wave. They began to ask him which guild he was from and who he was in general. But he replied that this is not the end and there are many more waves. They all better hurry up and get ready. The current rank of the gates should not be lower than A. If they really want to survive, they should be taken very seriously. They clearly listened to Li Jun's commands and advice. And they promised that they would start training. When the boy finished talking with the participants, he felt that someone was behind him. It was the head of the Guild of the Army of the North. He stood in one place and could not move. He was very angry because everything did not go according to plan. June was sure that he was going to take over the hunters who entered the battle at the most important moment. He completely destroyed his plans. As soon as everything is over, these hunters will be on his side. While there was a break between waves, he decided to check his status. He was already level 24. This gate will become its foundation for growth. Here he will reach level 30. And those hunters whom he now helps will follow him. The next wave began. June could not only attack powerfully, but also defend himself. With the help of his shield, it was difficult to penetrate his defenses with magical or ranged attacks. After the monsters are exhausted, he changes defense to attack. He destroyed them one by one and never got tired. There was another break. Already the fourth wave was successfully cleared. He saw that the boys were sitting without a mood after repelling the attack. The guy decided to come closer to find out the reason. It turned out that 4 guys died in this wave and they already doubted that any of them would manage to get out of here alive. June wanted to leave this gate without any loss, but he wanted to understand how it happened. He was angry with himself for not being able to provide his team with protection. The boy did not understand why the army of the North had not yet fully participated in the battle. He said it very loudly so that everyone around could hear. He asked why they consider them cannon fodder. And they are going to stand there and continue, preserving the strength of their army. The guys from the raid also agreed. Because he was really right. Not a single member of the Northern Army was killed. They were not even injured. June urged at least to fight with dignity, or they continue to plan to sit back, watching how other hunters sacrifice themselves for them. Choi turned to his brother and said that he had warned him of a similar outcome of their actions. He himself also understood that his plan would soon be a complete failure. After clearing the waves, using the weak guild members and hunters, he planned to attack them, but now it was all over. They understood that they were trying to be sacrificed, and now all the members of the guild are also excited. The plan that the personality prepared for him benefited only this scumbag Lee Jun. He tried to understand how he should proceed. His brother turned to him at that moment. He told him that he decided to continue as is. And they will watch a little more. Considering that he had already spent a lot of energy, the difference between him and the head was very big. He will be able to defeat this boy. Moreover, he continues to use up his stamina, due to the fact that he fights with monsters. It was better for him if he continued to fight, and then he would see to his death. The fifth wave was completely cleared. With each wave, the monsters only get stronger. And now it's time for the pre-final boss. He was much more powerful than the pawn monsters. It was a water golem. But its dimensions were completely different, not as they should be in theory. Now he has appeared much bigger than what was said about him. His strength was high enough to single-handedly defeat an entire guild. June ordered everyone to step aside while he attacked. You need to wait for his attack. Due to its volume, it was difficult for him to attack with aim. Therefore, their chance was to move very nimbly and strike. But the fact is that the area of his attacks was very large, and hiding from them is a problem. The boys encountered such a powerful and destructive force in the dungeon for the first time. Since it was not possible to get close to him, the archers began to work. But there was no sense in this, because all the arrows flew through him. At the same time, they did not harm him. It was all made of water, so it was illogical to attack with conventional weapons. When they realized that the archers could not fight him, the infantry went into action. They had no choice. Therefore, it was necessary to at least somehow try to resist him. One of the hunters was the first to run to attack him. He was able to dodge his powerful blow. And when the boy approached, he wanted to cut off his limb. But nothing good came of it, and the monster hit him with his hand. No attacks worked, and no one understood how to overcome this monster. But they had a secret weapon, and that was Lee Jun. He sped up and approached the creature. Thanks to his high dexterity, the monster did not notice the boy running towards him. At the last moment, he jumped towards the golem. Only at the last moment before the impact, the monster was able to see the boy. But it was already too late. He delivered his powerful blow before the water golem could react. After the impact, everyone was waiting for the result, and the boy landed successfully. The participants were shocked who he was. How does he manage to do it? The gate was filled with magical energy. He asked not to try to use only his powers. It is necessary to use the forces of the gate. You also need to fill the weapon with mana. The archer thought that only high-ranking hunters could fill weapons with mana. But she decided to try. The girl took out an arrow and put it in the bow. Pulled it. And she noticed that it really worked, although she was not a high-ranking hunter. They all began to use gate magic and attack the golem. These attacks really did him a lot of damage. Thus, They had hoped that they could defeat him with Li Jun's tips and the use of gate magic. Such attacks hurt him much more, but they will not be able to completely destroy him. He decided to use his spear and imbue it with flame. To finish off this scumbag, he must destroy the core that holds all his magical power. But it was still too early, you need to wait a little. The hunters continued to harm him thanks to the magic of the gate. The golem was preparing to use its attack again, everyone needed to dodge. But June understood that the only chance to defeat him is now, when the core is fully exposed during his attack. The guy dodged his blow and decided to attack the core. He punched through it and destroyed the core with basic magical power. He successfully destroyed the pre-final boss. His patrons paid attention to him. Several patrons are shocked and interested in only one person. The boy returned his weapon, which was not even damaged after this fight. The comeback ability he got while leveling up was very handy. The hunters were amazed by the skill and intelligence of this boy. One of them mentioned that there were rumors about a hunter with a spear and a shield. He told this to his fellow commanders and they decided that this guy was just a monster rookie. They began to argue about his rank. Now they were sure that with such a fighter they would definitely be saved. All the members trusted Li Jun. He leveled up again. He also received an award for killing a golem. Then he got the achievement of being one of those who was able to defeat the water golem. Even the fallen angel smiled at him. Finally, he will be able to receive the support of several patrons at the same time. But after a few minutes, the fallen angel expressed his displeasure and the other patrons lost their interest. The guy was outraged, but at least he got a new ability. A demonic king also could not have several patrons. He was unsurpassed, he was not supported by many patrons, but he still managed to become strong. Now, in the boy's eyes, he has become even more unsurpassed. Choi-sun did not understand what he was doing to improve his skills so much in such a short period of time. He thought that the boy had only recently reached rank B. But what he saw proves that he is close to rank A. He was very angry. In addition to the fact that this boy completely destroyed his plan, he was also becoming stronger in his eyes every minute. John suggested the head make his move. Because if this continues, their lives will also be in danger. He understood that what happened was not part of his plans and they cannot simply observe. Choi-sun silently turned to the deputy chairman and continued to be silent. If his plan was completely destroyed, then you need to come up with a solution and a new plan to move on. And after that he asked Choi-sun to surrender. The chairman did not expect to hear such a thing. He asked him to back down, show his weakness and give up killing June. Did he really think that the chairman could lose? He created the army of the north and raised it. He is not one of those hunters who run away from everything. He disagreed with his defeat. He could no longer control his emotions and took out his sword. He began to shout to the entire dungeon and call his army. He ordered to take full-scale participation in the cleaning of this gate, so that no monster could get through them. His army still obeyed him, so they lined up and waited for further orders from the ruler. The king will never let his pride be trampled. The head of the Northern Guild decided to turn to his deputy and tell him something. But when he returned, he was not around. Only his helmet lay on the ground. It definitely belonged to John. Choi-sun remembered the moment when he awarded him with this helmet. Then he promoted him to deputy head. Then he said that with his face it would be difficult for him to control the guild members. Therefore, he prepared a helmet for him. And now he tried to direct his forces against his master, who gave him this life and allowed him to move alongside him to great victories. He showed deep contempt for the head. And for this he must answer. Choi-sun stepped on the shoe and broke it. Now he only wanted to find him and do what a traitor deserves. The leader looked at the battlefield and said that he was inviting death by his behavior. Meanwhile, the army of the north has already joined the main forces of the hunters. And she also began to destroy monsters in order to prove to her master how loyal they are. It must be said that they were quite skilled fighters for their level. They thought that now they would surprise everyone with their level of preparation and level of abilities. But they did not know that there was Li Jun, who had not even experienced monsters of this level. And when they saw it, they understood that they would not be able to surprise the hunters with anything. Guys from other guilds no longer needed the help of the Guild of the North, because they had a super newcomer. And now they can clear the wave without any problems. Jun inspired many boys with his strength and forced them to give their all. It helped them defeat monsters. Jun raised his level again after another sweep. From the outside it seems that he spends his stamina, but he raises his level and restores it to the maximum. While the boy was examining his new abilities after leveling up, the monster attacked him from behind. He also used dungeon magic and started attacking with fire. The boy turned and saw that it was a person. It was a girl, and she said that he lacked eyes behind for cover. But he sharply answered and said that he did not need it. The fact is that this girl was the same John in the helmet. It was actually a girl, but the boy didn't know it. She thought that he was disappointed in her because of that and refused to help. But she could not give up because of such reasons. She collected her emotions and went to help the monsters. She promised to put all her efforts to protect the hunters, and she wanted to exceed her maximum. This girl was very smart and strong. No one knew what to expect from her. John was determined to show her resolve by turning away from the army of the north. She destroyed monsters almost as efficiently as Li Jun himself. The girl believed that her justice would protect the people around her. They cleared another wave of monsters. But there were unpleasant moments. One of the hunters lost his friend during this task. He lay unconscious and did not respond to anything. His friend began to beg him to give him a potion and promised to repay them 100 times more as soon as they left the gate. It was a real hell. At the very beginning there were 111 of them, but now not even half of them are left. John asked Jun if he was okay and if he didn't have any injuries. He replied that everything is fine and also decided to inquire about John's well-being. But she was not given the opportunity to answer, because the soldiers of the army of the north approached them. They began to humiliate her. They remembered that she told how they would survive in these gates all together and see each other again outside of them. She is still the deputy head of the guild, and they allow themselves to communicate like this. Although the army of the north was always based on the killing of other people, for all members, but it, with its sense of justice, was not at all like them. He asked how long she was going to put up with it and not answer. He offered to join him, because she had already turned away from those whom she had cared for so long. That is why she did it. She wants to join him because they are very close to her, and she wants to take care of them and get them out of the mess they got into because of their fault. She can no longer do nothing and sit idly on the spot. She can no longer watch as they move further into the abyss. Choi-sun will still make his move even if it is beyond his capabilities and abilities. John asked not to worry about it because she was ready for it. The last wave has begun. Appearance of the final boss. The boss of the Gate of the Rain River, the annual worm, has appeared. The time has come for a real battle for life. Everyone was waiting for the main boss. Their ticket home. It was something unreal, big and terrible. It began to climb out of the river. The river level began to rise when the annual worm began to climb up. He was very dangerous and no one in the world had ever defeated him. All hunters compared to him were just small defenseless insects. They were knocked off their feet by the water rushing down on them. They could not even theoretically understand how to destroy this monster. Even Jun was as surprised as possible this time, although he had seen very powerful monsters. This one was an exception. John said that the army of the north has no way to kill him, but Choi-sun definitely has. And this method gave him a personality, she was sure of that. He has a method for killing such a giant monster. But before Choi-sun begins his hunt for this beast, there are those who will greatly hinder the completion of this raid. First of all, Lee Jun must deal with them. She warned Jun to prepare for battle and be ready at any moment. The other hunters watched this and could not believe that at such a crucial moment they would be fighting each other. John said that the army of the north was using them all. From the very beginning, they should have noticed the strange behavior on their part. They were going to kill everyone in order to take all the loot for themselves. She and who was the vice-chairman of the Guild of the North, and now she is ready to tell them this truth. Now they will attack them. If they don't trust her, just watching is enough. Because when they die, all the other hunters will be next. The boy could not understand what this sudden change of mood was. A true dragon slayer. She said that a hunter who gets stronger from being more and more cornered. The boys realized that they would most likely die anyway, so they decided to at least give these scumbags a decent fight. Choi-sun watched this and thought that it was a pointless venture and that they would not be able to overcome this opposition. He believed that nothing would change and ordered the army of the north to proceed according to the plan. Choi-sun began to activate his ability to finish off the year worm. Meanwhile, the worm absorbed all the water from the river while they argued among themselves. Most likely, he did it in order to then attack everyone with it at the same time. Its size and strength allowed it to swallow the entire river. It suddenly started raining in the dungeon. They used the annual worm in order to adjust the battlefield for themselves. The guy looked at the head and understood their plan. Their forces prevailed and they were in a winning position. Completes this raid, he will become another rotten hero born in this era. June has been pumping non-stop all these days, but will it be enough to defeat him? The boy's flame was really strange. It continued to ward, even under this downpour. The boy understood that now he had nothing but his weapons and his mind. He only had to fight to the last and win. He decided to attack first. The boy pushed off the ground and flew to his head. Choi-sun was waiting for him to reach him and was ready to defend himself. The battle of the century began between them. Now it was decided who would become a hero for the whole world, and who would remain a shadow and become an exile. The boy noticed that the strength of his head was no longer the same as before. He used all his power to defeat the enemy. Choi-sun could do nothing but defend. June continued to attack and it felt like he was not running out of energy at all. His weapon every time caused irreparable damage to the enemy. As a result, he could no longer take such powerful attacks. His body trembled and he could not even hold his own sword. He did not understand what these abilities were. They were on the bank of the river. On the contrary, its strength should increase. Moreover, he had already reached the A rank. The guy looked very confident, as if he knew that this would happen. He said that at the moment when he entered these gates, he was much weaker from the head. Did his patron give him support during all this time? June conserved his energy and moved like a small child and continued to pump while hunting. He hoped that now he would finally understand how wrong he was about him. But he did not speak so that someone would understand him. Choi-sun understood that he could not defeat this boy even if he used all his abilities against him. He began to call the annual worm for help. The monster's eyes immediately lit up and he switched to the boy. He began to attack him with his skills and magical weapons. June could only dodge these blows. He became so harsh when he received little support. But personality gave him even more strength. Power that is at a completely different level than what he had. The leader expected to kill the real power in his head. Protective instincts of an annual worm, as if he was protecting his child. He crawled to Choi-sun and protected him. In fact, it was impossible to approach him, even if he would stand and not defend himself. The worm will do everything for him. He climbed into the mouth of this beast. And June was waiting for the moment to attack him. When he waited for his moment, he immediately decided to attack him. Choi-sun thought that he wanted to give his life thoughtlessly. Only a desperate person can do that. Meanwhile, while June was fighting with Choi-sun, John was dealing with another deputy head. She was very angry with him and wanted to channel all her anger into strength. He said that if she falls on her knees and starts asking for forgiveness, then he will have mercy on her. But she will never be able to defeat him. The army of the north will be the only one who will be able to get out of this gate. She did not understand what was happening to him. Did he forget about their oath to protect humanity together? They got angry again in the battle. Their magical power overshadowed even their silhouettes. The girl tried to win at any cost. She was moving very fast and at first glance was superior to Choi. He attacked her without even looking, but it is not clear why. The sounds of their weapons echoed all the way to the gates. Meanwhile, the river worm was guarding its child. But they were both in his mouth. It was a smart enough decision to deal with the head first, and then get out of the worm. Because that way he will not be able to attack him in any way. And he could easily beat Choi-sun. Frankly, the chairman did not believe that he was capable of such a bold step. But the boy did not understand what he was talking about. Because he was just waiting for the worm to swallow him. Because when they protect their children, they swallow them and protect them inside their bodies. And regardless of what kind of worm it is always dry inside. The boy stuck the spear and it was visible how the skin of the worm splits from the inside. Then he set it on fire to demonstrate his superiority in this place. But in the dry stomach of the worm, the power of the patron saint of the year will be reduced to 0. And his ability to control the flame will become much stronger. The spear absorbed the flames. His attack power is temporarily increased. The hunters noticed that the worm began to burn and emit fire from its mouth. The same thing happened inside the worm. Choi-sun could not believe it. After all, he was a true king and he was chosen to become one. His aggression again began to prevail over his common sense. And he began to attack into the open June. He considered him a nobody and that he should not be here at all. June did not listen to this and did to him what he did to the rest of the monsters. Is it over for him and he has fulfilled one of his missions for this life? And then his bracelet worked. The skull of the Keeper of Souls absorbed the hero's soul. Finally, it was activated. There were many attempts to do this and now it was very appropriate. Because the boy knew that the skull of the Guardians of Souls does not absorb the souls of monsters. He needs human souls. In addition, strong people who have been pumped for a long time. The Lord of the Year was destroyed. All his support was stopped. The boy could not believe that the patron died. From the hands of a fallen angel. After the awakened one dies, the patron dies with him. But in the Demon King's book it was written that patrons never die. A black hole formed near the boy, which turned into a black crow. June could not fully understand what was happening. Raven said that he still did not answer his question. The boy had memories of what kind of goal he was pursuing. He killed a hunter, not a monster. He follows the path of a tyrant, not a peacemaker. That is, the way of the demonic king. But one is not enough. In order to change this world, he is ready to accept any dishonor and sin. He is even ready to surpass the demonic king. The fallen angel supports his decision. The raven flew up and said that it was a very interesting answer. They should see each other soon. And he disappeared from his vision while the boy could only watch this spectacle. He asked to tell the owner every little thing he saw here. Rain River Gate has died. It was completely destroyed and immobile. The guy made a big contribution. He received the essence of water. He got the achievement, the one who conquered the river. He also raised his level. The hunters stood and carefully watched what was happening to the worm. Opposite them stood the army of the north, who were expecting further instructions from their master. The worm simply burned out like ordinary firewood. And next to him appeared a human silhouette that was very similar to Li Jun. The hunters were very happy that he managed to deal with the annual worm. He came out of this fire with a smile on his face. John started screaming to warn the boy about the danger. Choi wanted to take revenge for his brother and unexpectedly attacked him.